noticed how the most significant conversations in a house often happen in the kitchen while someone is washing up or waiting for the kettle to boil? There's a quiet safety in those rooms where the ordinary business of living is on display all the time. The post sits on the counter, a tea towel hangs over the oven handle, and the air smells of toast and cooking. Someone is preparing vegetables, wiping the surface, or making a cup of tea. And the conversation begins. And it may start with something very ordinary. And then, almost without warning, someone says what they've really been thinking. A worry is shared, a memory returns, or a truth that's been circling the room for a few weeks finally finds its way into words. And it's often in these practical spaces, while our hands are occupied with the ordinary daily routines of life, that the deepest shifts catch us by surprise. We sometimes imagine that spiritual life requires us to step away from the clutter of everyday existence, as if the sacred can only be found in empty, silent places. Yet there is a rich tradition suggesting that the divine is also present in the noisy, complicated spaces of domestic life. The threshold of a home is a porous thing. The ordinary chores of the kitchen and the mysteries of eternity are constantly pressing against one another. Welcome. Welcome to Wednesday Wandering with me, Cate Field, wondering about things that are fascinating and interesting and spiritual and not just wandering off. I do hope you are well, and thank you so much for joining me today. The 29th of July is the day on which the Catholic Church celebrates the memorial of Saints Martha, Mary, and Lazarus. This combined memorial is relatively recent. Until 2021, the date was associated principally with St. Martha. And Pope Francis added Mary and Lazarus to the general Roman calendar, bringing the three members of the Bethany household together in a single celebration. The Vatican decree describes their witness through three actions: welcoming Jesus into their home, listening attentively to him, and believing that he is the resurrection and the life. And these three actions, welcoming, listening, and believing, give us a way of understanding the household of Bethany. It was a place of hospitality and friendship, a place of contemplation, of conversation, and of grief and restored life. To explore these ideas, we're going to place the atmosphere of Bethany alongside the music of the British singer-songwriter Kate Bush, who was born on the following day, the 30th of July. Throughout Kate Bush's remarkable career, she's created art that lives among the boundary between the domestic and the mythic. A washing machine becomes an ocean. A window separates the living from the dead. A difficult conversation between two people becomes a bargain with God. Now, I know it might seem a curious pairing, but bear with me on this. The village of Bethany lays on the southeastern slopes of the Mount of Olives, approximately 2 miles from Jerusalem. And it was close enough to reach on foot while still remaining outside of the crowded city. The Gospels allow us to imagine Bethany as a place of friendship and welcome, and this short distance from the tensions increasingly surrounding Jesus in Jerusalem. John tells us explicitly that Jesus loved Martha, Mary, and Lazarus. Luke gives us the familiar story of Martha and Mary, although he describes the location simply as a certain village. Christian tradition has long associated this household with the family at Bethany, described in John's Gospel. In Luke's account, Martha welcomes Jesus into her home and attends to the many practical demands of hospitality. Mary sits at the feet of Jesus, listening to what he's saying. Now, we can almost hear that clatter of dishes and sense the mounting strain of a meal that still has to be prepared. Martha finally reaches the limit of her patience. Lord, do you not care that my sister has left me to do all of the work by myself? She asks. Tell her then to help me. It's such a recognisably human moment. Martha is tired, she's frustrated, and perhaps aware that her irritation has been simmering for some time. She doesn't address Mary directly. She asks Jesus to intervene, and Jesus responds tenderly, Martha, Martha, you are worried and distracted by many things. Martha has often been cast as the practical sister caught up in her domestic duties, while Mary is presented as the spiritual one. But this neat division does neither women justice. Hospitality was an essential expression of care. Food had to be prepared. Guests needed somewhere to sit and something to eat. Martha's service was real and necessary and generous. Her difficulty appears to lie in the anxiety and resentment that have really begun to overwhelm her. Mary's place at the feet of Jesus also carries a significance that we can easily miss. To sit at a teacher's feet was the recognized posture of a disciple. Mary is listening and learning. She is being taken seriously as someone capable of receiving religious teaching. The scene gives dignity to her attentiveness and her intellectual life. She's taken her place as a disciple. John's Gospel reveals another side of Martha altogether. When Lazarus becomes ill, the sisters send a message to Jesus. Lord, he whom you love is ill. By the time Jesus approaches Bethany, Lazarus has been in the tomb for 4 days. The household that once offered friendship and hospitality has become a house of mourning. As soon as Martha hears that Jesus is coming, she leaves the house and she goes out to meet him. Mary remains at home. Martha's first words to Jesus contain grief, trust, and perhaps a degree of reproach. Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. It's a courageous statement. Martha doesn't disguise her pain or offer a polite religious response. She tells Jesus what she really believes, that she believes that his absence has cost her family and Lazarus' life. And then she adds, but even now I know that God will give you whatever you ask of him. Their conversation moves towards one of the central claims of John's Gospel. And Jesus tells her, I am the resurrection and the life. He asks Martha whether she believes this. And she answers him, yes, Lord, I believe that you are the Messiah, the Son of God, the one coming into the world. And this is one of the clearest declarations of faith in the whole Gospel. And it comes from Martha, the woman so often remembered mainly for worrying about the dishes and the dinner. Martha's service and her spiritual understanding belong to the same person. She attends to the needs of the household. She questions Jesus with remarkable honesty. She listens to his answer, and she articulates a profound faith. Martha is a host, a grieving sister, a friend, and a theologian. Mary then leaves the house and comes to Jesus. She falls at his feet and speaks the same words as her sister. "Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died." When Jesus sees Mary weeping and the people around her weeping, he is deeply moved. And then we come to one of the shortest and most powerful sentences in the Bible. Jesus wept. He knows that Lazarus will soon be called from the tomb, and still he enters the grief of the people he loves. The promise of resurrection does not make their sorrow unreal. At Bethany, faith and tears are permitted to exist together. Jesus is taken to the tomb. It's a cave with a stone lying against the front of it. "Take away the stone," he says. Martha immediately points out the physical reality of what lies beyond it. Lazarus has been dead for 4 days. There will be a smell. This is not a tidy or sentimental scene. Death has a physical presence. The tomb is sealed. The body has begun to decay, and the mourners are standing within the rawness of their loss. The stone is moved, and Jesus calls in a loud voice, "Lazarus, come out." The dead man emerges, his hands and feet still bound with strips of cloth. "Unbind him," Jesus says, "and let him go." Lazarus himself remains strangely silent. John records no speech from him, either when he leaves the tomb or afterwards. Later, he simply sits at the table with Jesus. His presence is testimony enough. He is the man who was mourned, buried, and returned to the family table. People begin travelling to Bethany to see both Jesus and Lazarus. His continued existence becomes so powerful that the chief priests begin plotting to kill him as well. There is something extraordinary in the image of Lazarus sitting at dinner. We can imagine the familiar table, the food being passed around, and Martha attending to the guests. Among them is the brother whose body had lain in a tomb. Daily life has resumed, although the household can never be quite the same again. At this dinner, Mary takes a quantity of costly perfume and anoints the feet of Jesus. She wipes them with her hair. John tells us that the house is filled with the fragrance. It's a deeply physical act. Perfume, hair, skin, and touch. It's an expression of love and generosity, and Jesus connects it with the approach of his own burial. The meaning of the moment enters through the senses. The sacred doesn't hover somewhere above the room. It fills the shared air of the house. When we consider the household of Bethany as a whole, we find many forms of human experience living together. There is the practical service, attentive listening, the disagreement, the theological conversation, there's illness, there's death, there's fragrance and food and grief and restored life. Martha, Mary, and Lazarus cannot be reduced to simple symbols. Martha is active and contemplative. Mary listens and acts with astonishing boldness. Lazarus speaks through his silent presence. Bethany is a threshold where the floorboards of an ordinary home seem to tremble with the weight of eternity. This quality of finding the mythic and the supernatural within daily experience is a defining characteristic of the music of Kate Bush. Kate Bush was born on the 30th of July in 1958, and she grew up in a creative family in Kent, in southeast England. She wrote songs from an early age and emerged into public life while still a teenager. In 1978, at the age of 19, she reached number 1 in the UK charts with her first single, Wuthering Heights. and she became the first female artist to achieve a UK #1 single with a song that she had written herself. I remember this so well. The song was inspired by Emily Bronte's novel, and there's this wonderful coincidence that Emily Bronte and Kate Bush share the same birthday. Is that a coincidence, though? Who knows? I just remember going to school the next day and thinking, wow, I have just heard that on the radio. And it was unbelievably amazing. Wuthering Heights itself takes place at a threshold. Kate Bush sings in the voice of Catherine Earnshaw, who returns as a ghost and pleads to be admitted through a window. The house represents warmth, memory, and human habitation. Outside lies the wild expanse of the Yorkshire moor with its wind, darkness, and restless supernatural energy. Catherine belongs to both places and is fully at home in neither. The living and the dead are separated by a pane of glass, yet love, grief, and memory continue to pass through it. At Bethany, Lazarus is called through another boundary, the sealed entrance of a tomb. The stone is removed and the dead man is summoned back towards the voices of those who love him. In both stories, the threshold marks the place where absence is challenged by relationship. Someone stands on one side of a boundary and calls towards the person on the other side. Kate Bush's music returns repeatedly to these boundary places. On her 2005 double album Ariel, she moves between the textures of domestic life and the immense rhythms of the natural world. In the first part, A Sea of Honey, contains individual songs exploring parenthood, memory, washing, and ordinary human preoccupations. The second part, A Sky of Honey, follows the changing light of a summer's day through the afternoon, through to sunset and darkness, towards the return of morning. Human voices mingle with birdsong, music, and the sounds of the garden. The scale shifts constantly. A painter working in the evening light becomes part of a larger meditation upon beauty, upon creativity and time. The song of a blackbird opens into a vast musical landscape. A family garden becomes a place where the changing sky can be watched as if it were a great unfolding drama. In Mrs. Bartolozzi, Bush begins with the repetitive task of cleaning and laundry. A woman washes the floor and watches the clothes turning together behind the glass of a washing machine. Gradually, the water inside the machine becomes almost oceanic. The clothes seem to take on a life of their own, twisting together like bodies carried by the sea. The song evokes memory, intimacy, longing, and possible absence, although Bush leaves its meaning unresolved. The washing machine remains an ordinary appliance, while the imagination turns its circular movement and motion into something mysterious and sensual and immense. The round glass door becomes another threshold. On one side stands a woman in her home, and on the other, water and memory churn together in a private ocean. A similar transformation occurs in Running Up That Hill, originally conceived under the title A Deal with God. Bush imagines a man and a woman. They're exchanging places so that each might experience life from the other's perspective. The song explores a longing that lies at the heart of many intimate relationships, the desire to be understood fully by another person. This emotional difficulty becomes a mythic bargain with God. The running body, the steep hill, and the imagined exchange of identities give physical form to the struggle to cross the distance between two people. Kate Bush's work suggests that an ordinary room can contain an enormous imaginative landscape. The kitchen, the garden, the washing machine, and the bedroom window, they are charged with memory and possibility. The same is true of the household at Bethany. Its holiness grows through the relationships within it, through hospitality and honest speech, attentive listening, shared food, shared grief, and shared love. This may encourage us to look at our own daily routines with a gentler eye. There are times when we feel the pull of Martha's many tasks. Meals must be prepared, messages answered, floors washed and swept. And appointments, they have to be remembered. The work appears to multiply whenever we turn our backs. There are also times when we long for Mary's place at the feet of the teacher, a place where we can listen and learn and allow our attention to rest. Within us, there may also be something of Lazarus, a silent part of ourself waiting to be called back to life. The Bethany stories allow these aspects of human experience to remain within one household. Practical work, contemplation, questioning, sorrow and renewal can all belong to a spiritual life. Perhaps keeping house for the divine begins with attention. It might be found in preparing a meal for someone we love, listening carefully to a child, especially when that person is just speaking, allowing a difficult truth to be expressed in the safety of the kitchen. It might also be found in a quiet chair beside the window, in the fragrance of something cooking, with the birdsong at the end of the day, or even just that steady turning of the washing machine. Our homes contain thresholds that we cross many times without noticing. Those doors between one room and another, windows between shelter and sky, and moments when ordinary conversation opens into something much, much deeper. The household at Bethany contained work, friendship, and frustration. It contained conversation and death and perfume and food and restored life. And it was holy because the people within it made room for encounter. So perhaps the question for this week are these. Where are the thresholds in your own home where the ordinary and the spiritual seem to meet? Which part of the Bethany household feels closest to you and feels closest to your life at the moment? Are you serving with Martha? Are you listening with Mary? Or waiting with Lazarus for some quiet part of you to be called back to life? Thank you so much for listening today. If you have enjoyed this Wednesday Wandering, please like and subscribe if you haven't done so already. Perhaps leave a comment below and tell me what your thoughts are. I would absolutely love to know whether a familiar room, an object or daily task has ever opened into a moment of unexpected meaning for you. Perhaps it was a conversation in the kitchen, or a quiet view from the window, or a piece of music that suddenly changed the atmosphere of an ordinary day. Next week, we will be wandering and wondering once again through the people, ideas and stories that continue to shape our spiritual imaginations. Until then, take good care of yourself, and I'll see you very, very soon. Bye-bye.